Greetings, YouTube. I can remember when people into disaster preparedness were called survivalists. But eventually, survivalists got a really bad name because it became this pro gun, I want to shoot black people kind of racist meme attached to it. There was all this, it was almost like this, just shy of actual paramilitary or full blown mercenary kind of an attitude around the term survivalist. So those that were just into being prepared started calling themselves preppers. But that same kind of toxic idea or framework began to infect the prepper community too, as far as that ideology of pro-gun, less skill, tactical over actual tactics. And I read something on the Big Blue recently, and the article they were linking to actually wasn't what interested me. What interested me were the comments that people were having about it. There are people on Metafilter that are very bright and very eloquent, and I have captured 3 of their passages that I want to read you right now, dealing with kind of the prepper mentality and some of the things wrapped around it, because I think it really plays into the zeitgeist of the minute in America. The whole GOP base idea of white supremacy. So here we go. If preppers were serious about ensuring the survival of their families in a situation where society no longer functions, they'd learn a lot more about domestic tasks rather than spending their time shopping for tactical gadgets. But that's boring. Imagining you will be remade as some sort of Judge Dredd and finally take revenge on all your neighbors and ethnic teens who fail to defer to your preferences in all things is what most preppers are actually about. They hate the government wherever it doesn't give them reverence. That's why they're able to be both anti-government and pro-police military, and that was written by one Kitty Stardust. People aren't just preparing for the apocalypse they want, or to kill people they don't like. This person disagrees with some of my positions, but he's very well spoken. They're preparing for a world that contracts to manageable size that they have some control over their destinies. They're preparing for a world in which they matter. They're doing it in a perverse, unrealistic, racist, and harmful way, yes, but every dystopia is a utopia inside out, which is a very insightful way of looking at it. In the post-collapse future that they imagine, it's not just that they think they're the kings of the roost or whatever. It's that they think they'll be able to feed themselves, treat their health problems themselves, no longer have to worry about a mortgage, no longer have to worry about getting fired or laid off. You can't get fired from an apocalypse. And the other thing about the post-collapse world they're envisioning is that it's not a cash society. For some people, they're thinking, aha, I'll shoot bad guys and take their stuff. Others are thinking, I will keep my home by virtue of having it, not because I still make the rent or the mortgage on the first. The thing about fantasy apocalypse is that you know what you're getting. It may be bad, but it's predictable. Obviously, a real apocalypse wouldn't be, and that was written by Frowner. And that's very insightful. That the idea that an apocalypse would lead to a future that shrinks things down to a personal space under the control of the person having that dystopian fantasy. And the idea that every dystopian future is a utopia inside out is also very good. And then we had the last comment, which is in reference to Frowners. Someone pay Frowner. That was 20 times more insightful than the linked column. Apocalypses cause predictable, immediate problems, which in fiction create the black and white choice of do this or die. In this fantasy, the prepper has all the control. By preparing for the fantasy, they can pretend they have control over the things in their current life. They can excuse selfishness, hoarding, and greed as preparation. And again, this does sum up some of the way the prepper mentality presents itself in a lot of the things that I encounter on a regular basis on the internet. And if you really want to survive something, if you're really honestly concerned about an apocalypse, the best tool you can have is a social net, a functioning social net, because that's what's going to get you through the bad times. Because if everything's gone, if there is no government to help you, The only people you're going to have to rely upon are your neighbors and your friends. Because just your family, you aren't going to make it. I don't think people understand how horrible life was before we had a functioning system of firemen and policemen and military and rescue services and rangers in our parks and streetlights and sewers and all the things that make our modern world functional. But I'm a student of history. I do understand how horrible it was and how difficult it was and what the short life expectancy was. I was looking at a chart just yesterday, literally just yesterday, that showed in 1662 the life expectancies of 100 people, theoretic people, based off of the death reports that were just beginning to be recorded at that time. They had just begun to record the lives and deaths of people and how they died. And so this is the first time they actually had data. It was in England. And in 1662, nobody lived past 76. 76 isn't old. My father's older than 76. My stepmother's older than 76. My mother is creeping up on 76, as is my mother-in-law. And they could have another 20 years. My wife's grandmother's 102. And the only reason she is 102 is because we live in a modern world. Life without the modern conveniences that we take for granted, the infrastructure that we have ignored so thoroughly in America, without that, life is brutal, ugly, and short. And I understand this. Now, I'm not a prepper. I have enough to last probably for a week, supplies in my home and things like that. So to get me through most average disasters, I am more prepared when it comes to things like flashlights. I've got entire shelves of them. I've got solar lights. I got 2 on the porch right now. I'll get 4 on the porch right now, charging up in the sun. So I've got more preparedness than your average person does. Not to mention I have a plethora of weapons available to me, which I will probably never need because in actual disasters, your neighbors aren't the real danger for the most part. Now, I don't have a great social net. I don't know most of my neighbors. My wife knows some of them. But I'm not a social person when it comes to the real world. I never have been. I'm much more comfortable here in front of this. I'm much more comfortable here. I'm an internet person. This is where I like to be. I don't like to be out in the sun. My wife is a lizard. I'm a mushroom. I like it cool and dark. But we still love each other. We get along well. I guess I'm glad that the mushroom doesn't get eaten by the lizard. I guess I'm glad you married an iguana. They eat vegetables, don't they? But the prepper community has some great ideas for the most part, and some of them really do plan for farming and home medication as best you can, and home dentistry, and those things which are important. But not everyone has those skills, and they're not going to survive with their tactical gear, with their big black rifles and their camo gear and their ghillie suits. These are not what you need to survive the apocalypse. More important are things like functioning gardening tools and the knowledge of how to grow plants and how to keep chickens and things like that. That will help you get through in a true apocalypse a whole lot more than will the things that many people in the prepper and the survival community are doing. And a lot of it is a reaction to the world they don't understand. So here's an idea. Learn to understand it.